Hi, my name is Ellie Houghton.
Hi,
Hi,
I'm
Ellie.
Natalia Schoenweather.
And I'm
Natisha?
Maddie Locke.
I'm sorry, I missed the last two names.
I'm
What's your name?
Natalia.
Natalia.
My name is Maddie Locke.
Nice to meet you all.
And we are members of the Riley Institute's advanced team, a group of Furman University students interested in government and public policy. While we're home over the summer, we're inviting past Riley Institute speakers into our own homes to get their unique perspectives on COVID-19 and how it's impacting various sectors of people's lives.
Thank you for inviting me into your homes.
And today we're joined by Basil Bacall. He's the president and CEO of Elite Hospitality Group, which is outside of Detroit, Michigan. As a business leader and entrepreneur, Mr. Bacall owns numerous hotels and real estate properties. He's a Chaldean immigrant who came to the United States to seek different opportunities when he was 17. And he was invited to be a panelist at the Riley Institute's 2018 Straight Talk series on the economics of immigration. Today, we're really excited to speak to him about the impact of COVID-19 on the hospitality industry.
Yes, Mr. Bacall, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We hope that you and your loved ones are well and safe during these times.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure speaking with you, and I appreciate you taking the time as well.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and ask a few questions if that's okay. Are you ready?
Go right ahead.
Perfect. The hospitality industry has been hit hard by the pandemic as travel has slowed and hotels have had fewer guests. Could you tell us what your experience has been with your own hotels and what you've observed across the larger industry?
Well, there's many aspects to this unprecedented pandemic. As you know, the last one was over 100 years ago. So none of us have experienced anything like it or remotely like it. It impacts different facets of our life as well as our businesses. One, to start with, is the safety of our families, safety of our associates, staff, and the safety of our guests. And this is something we never had to deal with before. So was a big learning curve for all of us just to comprehend the magnitude and the depth of this problem and then adjust and adapt to deal with it. Then besides safety, the livelihood of so many people. I mean, all of a sudden, within a matter of a month, 2 months, you have 20, 30, 40 million people unemployed. Well, guess what? The airlines, hotels, restaurants are hit the hardest. So naturally, we went from 70, 80% occupancy around, let's say, March 10th. And by the 25th, we basically decided to shut the hotels down. You're down to 1 or 2 guests a day. So the livelihood of so many people was on the line. They can't make a living, they can't get a paycheck, they can't pay their bills, and it's a shock. Third, you're talking about, just to put things in perspective for you, you went from, I'm gonna give you, maybe you remember 911. We went from 75%, 80% occupancy to 50%. In the deep recession, we went to 40%. And to go all the way to 0, I don't know if anybody in the hospitality industry has ever expected or predicted anything that could put you. Maybe you'll have one property for local disaster, but not across all of your portfolio and across the United States and the globe at large. So it impacted us in an unprecedented way.
To follow up on that question, since many states are moving to reopen and the stay-at-home orders have expired, it seems more people are starting to travel than they were a month or 2 ago when the pandemic was at its height. How are you balancing safety concerns with financial concerns and customer experience? And also, what protocols are in place to protect your staff and your customers?
Great question. So safety concerns, first and foremost, and regardless of the times and the crisis, the safety of our associates, customers are the #1 priority. Makes it much more important in these crises because as you remember, we're getting different reports. Everybody was learning about this. Even the CDC was learning about this, and they were altering or changing or modifying their story within days from each other. So nobody really knows or knew what this COVID is all about and how contagious it is. As a result, we have to adjust and adapt to the safety concerns. If you remember, there were reports on many of the major networks. Some would say stay 3 feet away. Some would say 6 feet away. So we had to make sure to adhere to the CDC, state regulations, local health department, the brand standards, which is Marriott, Hilton, and the like, as well as our own standards, all that, and you have to balance it. That's as it relates to safety. Now, I'm going to address the protocols within the safety, and then I'll come to the guest experience and the financial. Protocols, for example, where if you remember before, the guest comes in, checks in, and then a reaction is to the extent sometimes shaking hands, and to that extent. Now, not only you have a screen, a lot of the check-ins is done remotely, digital check-in. So, and the key is sanitized and put in a slot for them. So one person at a time picks up the key and goes to the room, or they could use their telephone to open the door. So that has been minimized. The cleaning, the cleanliness of the rooms, first, in addition to all the sanitizing stations and double and triple the previous protocol of extra sanitation, now you have the cleaning does not happen during your stay, but in between the stays. And housekeepers would have double gloves, 3 gloves with a mask on where you have not seen before. Same thing with our restaurants. So it has changed in a way nobody would have thought of, but it's all for the safety of our guests and our associates so we can weather the storm. As it comes to the guest experience, you know, more important than ever, the guest experience, it's extremely important for those guests to feel welcome and safe. Safe is very, very noticeable thing. People must feel safe coming into your property. Whether you notice or not, they're watching every move, how we are conducting our own safety. And that gives them the comfort. This has a lot to do with fear, confidence, and comfort. If you don't feel this place is safe, you're not going to eat there, you're not going to stay there. So we have pushed that up to the highest level that we could at our properties to make sure the guest feels that they are provided with the cleanliness, room to stay, and the best experience in terms of accommodating that guest. Whether because of this COVID-19, things have changed and people have many requests. They still have to be done within the safety protocol, but those needs might not have existed before, whether they need a medicine or something has to go get something for them because they cannot do it for themselves. So we stay focused on providing the guest with the utmost guest experience that they can be satisfied with, and to most importantly, to exceed their expectations. Now come to the financials. Oh, wow, that's a tough question. So to give you a perspective, it takes an average hotel, depending on your loan, debt service we call it, anywhere between 45 to 55% occupancy at normal rate, normal average daily rate to break even. So let's say at a Hampton Inn, for example, or a Marriott product, the occupancy could be 75% at $140 a night, okay? And that was the norm. So you need every bit of 55% at $140 or $135, give and take, to just break even. Pay the bills. You're not getting a return on your investment as an entrepreneur. Now, let me bring you to reality of today. We dropped to 0. Our expenses still mostly there. Today, we're about 20% on the average, 25, but the rate went from 140 to 109 or 110. So now that 25% was really 17 or 18% because of the rate has dropped, give and take. But your expenses at 20% are every bit of 75% what they are at 80%. So if a hotel expenses were $200,000 a month just to pay the bills, at 20%, you're every bit of 150. With such a low revenue, you're in the red every month above 100K. Just to give you some perspective of what we're dealing with.
What you were saying earlier about the new protocols and everything, I was actually at a hotel recently and I needed more toilet paper, and usually it's on the sink or under the counter or something, but I actually had to go and get it because they were keeping it under lock and key, which is something that I'm sure none of us would have ever experienced before COVID and the frenzy over toilet paper. So that was just one of my experiences that I thought of when you were sharing those different protocols.
Absolutely. And there was a huge shortage of toilet papers in the beginning. So I think there's more supply in the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand.
Yes. Okay. My question for you is, as the restrictions are lifted, some business owners, especially those in the restaurant industry, are still concerned about being able to turn a profit while operating at a reduced capacity. So in your mind, what protections and government measures should be in place to ensure the viability of local businesses?
I think the government has stepped up in a tremendous way, like nothing that we've seen before. But still, there's something lacking. There's something not there. And I want you to pay attention to this. Instead of the aid being across the board, uniform to everybody, one size fits all, it should be more customized. Case in point, airlines, hotels, and restaurants are hit the hardest. I just explained to you, we went for an entire month, we had 0 occupancy, 1 room, and it's usually the health workers, which we comp the room. Basically, we didn't even charge them for it because they're going through a difficult time. So how could that be the same as a supermarket, which their business tripled? The government programs were not well thought out, and maybe they didn't have the time, maybe it's very complicated for them, but they were not well thought out as they should have been, because my friends who own supermarket got as much aid in a PPP as well as economic injury loan as I would qualify for, and I went from 75% to 0, and their business has tripled. See the disparity? Should be more customized. You treat the sick. You don't treat the healthy and the sick in the same fashion. So that was something that was not well thought out. So to give you a perspective on what has taken place to how it impacted us, the PPP, the payroll protection, that is about 2.5 times your monthly payroll. Well, guess what? In our business, I burned through the entire PPP in less than about 3 weeks between my expenses, my note payment to the bank, and my employees, even at 10% occupancy. So this is our 4th month running at extremely low occupancy. How much of an impact did that have? Not that much, if you put it, just to put it in perspective for you. The second would be the economic injury loan. They're limited to $150,000. Well, by the time you qualify, if you qualify, then you have to get the consent of the bank, because that is in default of the loan documents in almost all of the banks, let alone CMBS loan, the commercial mortgage-backed security lenders. So if they approve them, which sometimes they don't, that will last you another month. To answer your question directly, now that I laid the foundation, the aid should be more customized to the need, and it should go maybe through a banking institutions, through a government-backed assurances to these lenders that will pay back. For myself and our properties, I don't need no charity. Help me survive to something I did not cause, and it's totally out of my control, and the government shut us down. Make sure to keep the banks and the lenders off our back. We'll pay them everything, including the interest and whatever it's due in fees, but they cannot be, in a way, threaten us with default letters and so forth. So the government should step up in more effective way, if you would. I'm going to give you another aspect which nobody talks about, but a lot of people are hurting because of it. And that is the commercial mortgage-backed securities. These loans are sold as bonds. So I have, for example, several properties that these lenders cannot work with us. They have not given us any deferral, any help, nothing. Absolutely. They want their entire payment in full every month, or they will default you and take your property away from you. Nobody's addressing that. So that's why I say it's not one size fits all. It needs to be more customized. They need to address all these issues. Otherwise, you would have people losing their jobs left and right. You'd have business owners losing their properties left and right if these are not addressed within time. And now it's a 4 months. Luckily for us, we're prepared for, long period of time because we thought of always having reserve. But what about those who cannot last 3-4 months? Do you see how the problem could be much worse by unemployment and people losing their livelihoods that they put in their businesses?
Yes, that makes total sense. And I agree with you. I think it should be much more customizable, for sure.
Great.
My family even had to stay in a hotel recently. We stayed there for quite a while, actually. And so my mom was actually surprised by just how different it was. And she actually worked in the hospitality industry when she was younger. So she was just shocked by how, and we were staying at a newer property. So it was sad to see how empty everything was. And it was this brand new property in our area. So in your early days as an entrepreneur, you repositioned a financially distressed asset into an award-winning, profitable hotel. It seems like you know a thing or two about the need to adapt in times of hardship. What do you think businesses within the tourism industry can do to stay relevant and survive during this time?
Great question. There are controllable variables and there are uncontrollable variables. Obviously, the uncontrollable variables are something we cannot change. None of us caused COVID-19 and none of us control COVID-19, but we control what we do. And that's what's going to be the saving grace, if you would. That's what's going to help us weather this storm. So the controllable variables would be how well we adapt, how well we change our policies to cope, staying focused on the core values of our business. What are they? It's our people, first and foremost. You cannot run a business without good people. The clients, making sure we satisfy and exceed their expectations. We have efficiencies. If we were to run things in the same manner as we run it before when we had 90% occupancy and not be as efficient as possible, obviously would be detrimental to our financial survival. So case in point, the front desk person that was mainly checking in guests and attending to their needs every now and then, now that same front desk person, if they're not busy, they're cleaning the lobby, they're doing some laundry, folding some laundry, and doing whatever it takes to minimize an extra, to minimize the need for an additional employee. So that efficiency comes in many different levels, from utilities to everything else. And instead of before, where we said, I'm gonna just tell you about the example you probably never think of. Before, our laundry person, let's say the machine would hold 75 pounds of laundry. Well, they would run the laundry at 50. Well, right now, we want to make sure it's a 75 because we don't want to waste our water. So it made us much more efficient in thinking in so many different ways. Where before, just small examples where you would have in the hallways, you'd have all these lights and all these air conditioning. Well, guess what? If we're running 10% or 15% occupancy, we shut the third, the fourth, the sixth floor down. We're only down to one floor because you don't have the occupancy. So all these things, we're talking about how efficient you could be. That's something we can adopt. Make use of the technology to the best of our abilities. And more than ever, everybody, that's why you see the NASDAQ is off the chart. All these technology companies are being used like never before. And we have to stay relevant, and we have to adapt to that reality and use it to the max of our abilities to serve our clients and our employees. I guess most important is, to me, is staying true to your values as a business and stay focused, and most important, and that's your people, your guests. Everything else would fall in place if you're doing the right things.
I think that's great.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us before we end this?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to mention a couple of things, that different markets recover differently. In a market, I have a property in a leisure market versus a property in a corporate market by the Chrysler headquarters here in Michigan. And the leisure market recovers a lot faster because of summertime and seasonal business, while the property at the Chrysler headquarters in Auburn Hills is still seeing that single-digit occupancy. So that varies. So these different things just kind of makes the recovery not uniform across our industry. But I am confident today that we'll overcome this and we'll come out stronger than ever. We just got to stay resolved and do the right thing. And, you know, I trust in the Lord, and we'll make it through this.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It's been so interesting. And it was great to see you again after you came to see us a few years ago. So Mr. Bacall, we really appreciate your insight and time, and thank you for joining us today. Take care.
I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, ladies.